Hello there, Steve Stein here with our friend Dr. Emmett Miller, pioneer in mind-body research and medical doctor, clinical hypnotist, among a lot of other things. So we're really fortunate to be with Emmett today. And today we're going to discuss leadership. And not only leadership, but I think leadership in the digital age or in modern times. And we're going to start with kind of an overview from Dr. Miller on the history of leadership.
So good to be here again with you, Steve.
Great.
Leadership, it's actually one of my pet subjects because, as you know, I really became interested in my field, or what really guided me into my field was my interest in how the world could be changed. When I discovered the horrors that had been inflicted upon humanity with, Adolf Hitler killing 6 million people and Joseph Stalin, 15 million people, how we have taken the inventions of how we've taken the chemical and mechanical inventions of our age and used it to exterminate human beings. That's what brought me into it. And when it comes down to thinking about leadership, I like to think about the history of leadership, but that is also the history of our race, of our species. We are, as I became abundantly clear about in my studies in comparative anatomy and embryology, we are animals. We have evolved into what we are now, and we carry our history along with us. And so for hundreds of thousands of years, our modes of being with each other reflected our genetic history. And so if you look at, let's say, if you look at a chimpanzee tribe, there's one guy, he's the alpha male. There's not an alpha 1 and an alpha 2, there's an alpha male. And that means that he has whatever females that he wants. Any of the other males that he catches fooling around, they're going to get their butts kicked. And so that alpha male just kind of struts around, and at the end of the day, he sits down and all the females come and they groom him and they do that, and then they procreate, and that's how it goes. And if you look at a herd of deer or antelope, you'll find that there's one stag with all of the horns, and he's number one, and he cracks his head with the others, and he's the leader, and everybody follows him. And so as mammals, that's what we do. We have a tendency to believe that there's one strong, big one who can kick everybody else's butt. You don't mess with him. And everyone follows him. And so maybe he's not such a good guy. Maybe he's very argumentative. It's hard to get along. He's not very compassionate, but he's big and strong, so we'll follow him. And he may be a bastard, but he's our bastard, that kind of thing. And so as human beings, we look back just at our very, very recent history, the last few thousand years. That's what it's been. It's been Genghis Khan. It's been Napoleon. It's been on and on. You see these leaders who are out there. You join the Army or Air Force or wherever. There's a sergeant. He's your leader. And the sergeant, he has his leader. He's the general above him. And the general says, you do this. And if you don't do this, the reason that officers carry a little pistol, officers don't run around with machine guns usually. They have a little pistol. And the reason they have a pistol is you order someone to do something, attack that machine gun nest. And the guy says, no way, I'm not doing it. Well, you shoot him. That's what the pistol's there for. That's leadership as we have known it in the past. Now, Now I want to go back just a little over 100 years ago. Sigmund Freud came along and revealed something to us. Is that we have not one mind, but we have two minds. One which is conscious, which is intentional, which considers things and thinks about things. It's the part that we identify with. But there's also a subconscious mind or an unconscious mind. This is the paleo-mammalian cortex, the limbic system. It's what we share with all the other animals, and we can be trained. And most of our lives is really conducted by this automatic part of our mind. We don't do too much real thinking with this conscious part of ourselves. And so Sigmund Freud taught us that there were these two parts of our mind, which is, a lot of people didn't quite buy it, they didn't quite understand it. But one person who really did understand it was a fellow called Edward Bernays. Have you ever heard of him?
I've heard of him. I don't have a clear memory of what he did specifically.
Okay, we're going to go out to breakfast.
He didn't invent the sauce, the Bernays sauce? I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, well, if we go out to breakfast, I mean, what do we have for breakfast in this country? Eggs and bacon. That seems normal to us. It was never that way until Bernays came along. This is in the teens and the 20s, and that period of time. Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew, and he believed, Sigmund Freud, that there is another part of the brain that we can connect with. And so he was working for the Hormel pork company, and they wanted to sell more ham and bacon. And so they hired Bernays. And what Bernays did was he sent out letters to physicians, to 3,000 physicians. And he said, do you think it's a good idea that people should have a nice, heavy breakfast in the morning so they'll have a lot of energy to work all day, in the factories or wherever they're working? And I don't know, maybe 1,000 physicians answered him and said, yes, we think that's a good idea. So then he put out ads that said, 1,000 physicians agree having a heavy breakfast in the morning is a good thing. Eggs and bacon. And that's how our culture started using eggs and bacon. Up until that, people had a little oatmeal, a little fruit, or the kind of things that we now, if we're health conscious, what we eat now, that's what we used to eat before we went to this. And then he got hired by Lucky Strike. And Lucky Strike says, we'd like to sell more cigarettes. And all these women around, and women, of course, never smoked. It was considered a gross thing for a woman to smoke. So you never saw a woman smoking a cigarette. It was frowned upon. So women didn't smoke. So what Bernays did was he got a group of young debutante fashion models, and I guess he paid them, and he got them to walk in the front of the Easter parade. I think it was in 1919 or something like that. And they were going to walk in front of the Easter parade, and at a certain signal, they were all going to take out cigarettes and light them up. And then he informed all the newspapers to make sure their photographers would be there, because leading the Easter parade was going to be an event of great social significance. So all the photographers showed up, and at a signal, all these ladies lit up their cigarettes, and they were all dressed fancy, and they have their poodles, and they walk carrying what he called freedom torches. Freedom torches, cigarettes. And so from that point on, it became fashionable for women to smoke. And then you have these commercials that are teaching women to smoke, fashionable women smoking and looking all glorious. And presto changeo, the sales of Lucky Strike go through the roof, because now we have women smoking, and of course creating millions more cases of lung cancer and emphysema and disease like that. Okay. And so Bernays called what he was doing propaganda. And he wrote the book called Propaganda. And I won't go into all the principles, but they are the principles that we know because they're being used on us right now. He was hired by President Wilson because First World War was beginning. And of course, France and England were running out of money to fight the Germans. And they wanted us to help. And Wilson was very much against going into it. But, you know, unfortunately, J.P. Morgan was one of the biggest loaners. He had loaned huge amounts of money to France and Germany, to France and England, and they were losing the war. So he went to Wilson and he says, hey, you know, if those guys lose this war, I'm going to lose all this money. So Wilson said, well, we can't have that happen. So they hired Bernays. And so Bernays thought about it and said, no, we can't say go to war with Germany because people won't buy going to war. But what we're going to do is make the world safe for democracy.
That was his line?
Yes, that's what we were doing. And so they put that out there. Before long, there we were, lining up to go and stand in knee-deep water in the trenches of World War I. That's what got us into the war. Bernays went on. He went on to become a major propagandist for several other United States presidents throughout time, although we don't know about him. You look him up, Bernays. It's real. And do you know who really found his work valuable? The Nazis. Goering. They came along and they read his book on propaganda. And if you look at what the Nazis did, they used his principles incredibly. And of course, Bernays was blown away and shocked by what they were doing. Bernays thought he was bringing something good to humanity, and suddenly he found that the Nazis were using it to enslave people and to kill people and just do such terrible things. So,
and did his work stem from Freud?
Yes, it was all based because all he was doing is programming the unconscious mind through manipulating the symbols. And for instance, one of the things in leadership, if you see, how he got people to eat eggs and bacon, and how he got women to smoke was by saying, look at these leaders, look at these fashionable women. I mean, look at their bodies. I mean, look at their clothes. Look at those poodles. They are leaders, and they're smoking. You need to smoke too. Or here are the doctors. Back in those days, everyone respected doctors' opinions, and doctors are saying you should. So he learned celebrity endorsements. He learned to use, and so for all of these principles, right in his book, Propaganda. Well, so he was very shocked at how Germany was using his techniques, and so he changed the name Propaganda. And what do you think it was called?
Madison Avenue.
Public relations.
He changed that?
Yes. And so public relations is propaganda. It is about manipulating your unconscious mind to do what I want you to do, even if it's bad for your health, even if it makes you fat, even if it clogs your arteries with fat, even if it gives you lung cancer.
Is the point that it works because, and maybe I missed it, but for World War I, when he said, make the world safe for democracy, I mean, that's a benevolent overall thing, I guess. Is it or not? Or I mean, my history of World War I is not great, but can it be used for good, or is it only,
Absolutely.
you got cigarette smoking, you got bacon, all these things that are like not ended up not being good.
Absolutely. And those of us who are teaching meditation, who are teaching mindfulness, who are using hypnotherapy, who are doing any kind of therapy with people, we are using those same tools and techniques. And Sigmund Freud was a hypnotist. Sigmund Freud studied with people who had worked with hypnosis, and he began to use hypnosis because hypnosis is really so valuable. But he had the belief that the only way that hypnosis would work is if a person was amnestic for everything that had happened during the trance state. Well, that's false. You don't have to be amnestic for it to work.
What does amnestic mean? To forget everything?
You don't remember what happened during the state. After you wake up, I'll snap my fingers and you'll cackle like a rooster, but you won't remember that I'm telling you this. And then you're amnestic. Well, people were not amnestic, and that made him very nervous. So he thought it wasn't working. So he turned the chair around and just said, free associate. So when you look at psychoanalysis, it's simply another form of hypnosis, but it's not a direct hypnosis. It's an indirect form. So the tools of hypnosis are the basis of Freud's work, and his nephew, Edward Bernays, came along and uses those same tools of hypnosis to influence people. And therapists use those same tools, and more specifically hypnotherapists, in order to affect a person's unconscious mind, to get rid of addictions, to get rid of stress, to get rid of physical illness, to open people to develop emotionally and connect with other human beings and form positive relationships. But so yes, it can be used for positive. But what we have in the world that we live in now, to finish up, is our history. Our history is kind of following whatever's been placed up there as our leader, or little children watch as they have loved parents. Look at how they look up to their parents, and whatever the parents do, it seems right. Of course, it's love. So we're built in, have a tendency to think of leadership in that way. But now we live in a world where, look at what a single guy, Edward Bernays, was able to do just using primitive tools. But now in our world, we have hundreds of thousands of highly trained, brilliant human beings who've all studied the tools and techniques of propaganda. And their goal is to get you to do what I want you to do, or what the guy paying me wants you to do. I want you to vote Democratic, and therefore I'm going to convince you that Republican over there is a horrible human being. And I'm going to bring in a person that you respect. I'll bring in Barbara Streisand, and I'll have Barbara Streisand tell you why this is a despicable person. And because Barbara Streisand told you, you're going to believe so. Okay, so hundreds of thousands of it's like an army of specialists out to control your attention. And if you look at Facebook or Google or Amazon and those people, some of the most highly paid people, they're called attention engineers. And the goal is to keep your eyeballs focused on that screen.
So this, excuse me, but so this is the part of need for change, right? And is this what we're
Absolutely. So it's time that we make a change in how we've been doing it.
So in another realm, but I think related, is Apple and Amazon and all these technology companies. They have neuroscientists hired to figure out how to keep you basically addicted to your digital device. And they study that. If it's a red dot with your number of messages, it's almost impossible not to click on it. And so right. This is, I think, the need for change, it's macro, but it's also micro, and more than ever. So speak to that perhaps.
The essence of how you control people's attention. And by controlling their attention, you can control the images in their mind. And by controlling the images in their mind, you can control what they do. And in effect, that's leadership. I mean, perhaps the greatest, the most powerful single commercial I've ever seen is the Daisy commercial, when Goldwater was running for president. Goldwater had some ideas about, he was kind of loose with how he would feel about losing nuclear energy, or that was his reputation. And there's this young girl, and she has a daisy, and she's pulling the petals, and she's going 5, 4, 3, and as she's speaking, suddenly you hear a male voice coming in, 3, 2, 1, and then on 0 there's an atomic explosion. And when that commercial came out, Goldwater was gone. It was so effective. Delicacy and the innocence of this child, and then boom, an atomic explosion. And then, do you want your children to be incinerated by global nuclear war? If you do, if you don't, then you better not vote for Goldwater. So the secret to how our attention is controlled is to trigger your anxiety, to trigger your anger, to trigger your frustration. In other words, to trigger your limbic system, to activate your amygdala, that part of us that reacts when we think there's a life or death situation. What we're dealing with are not life or death situations. It's whether or not you're going to be late for work. It's not whether or not you're going to die.
But it feels like life or death.
It feels like life or death.
And the irony, I don't know why it comes to mind, I guess, because it's apropos, is I was going to this mindfulness conference in Manhattan. So I'm in New Jersey, just over the bridge, and it's really 4 or 5 miles, but when traffic is bad, or 7 miles, it could take over an hour. And I remember when I had a road rage attack going to a mindfulness event, and I lost it. And I was okay, I missed the first lecture, but if I can get on this train and find a parking spot, and it's 20 minutes to get around to find the parking lot, and all of a sudden the police close off the street, and I'm maybe 8 feet away from where I could park. And I paid money to go to this conference, and it's literally on on mindfulness and relaxation, and I'm punching the car, the steering wheel, and to me it was life or death, So I try, and I lost it later that day. I really needed to meditate, but so it feels like that, but. It's not really life or death.
That's right. That's right. If we look at our emotional reactions, and 99% of the time, the emotions that we're having are not useful to us. It's an obsessive, it's a compulsive thing that's happening here. Like the story of the fellow who comes into the psychiatrist, and he's going like this, and this is his first visit. The psychiatrist says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm keeping the African lions away." And the psychiatrist says, "Well, man, there's no African lions for 10,000 miles. He goes, "Yeah, it really works, doesn't it?" I mean, you're driving along and, some idiot cuts you off on the highway and you feel furious. So what use is that? It interrupts your conversation. It raises your blood pressure. It makes you do stupid things in your driving. It's a completely useless behavior. And yet we do it because something in us is thinking, that guy cut me off. This is a challenge. This is a conflict. And your limbic system, your paleo-mammalian cortex, says it's war. And you're going to punish that guy. And so that is how this deeper part of us is working. Okay, so your advertiser, your propagandist, or your public relationships, as we call propagandists, in order to control your eyeballs, make you feel afraid or angry. And so they'll say, you may have, you're out on they'll show the girl and there's you, and they're coming closer together, and all of a sudden she smells your breath and turns away like this, and it'll say, wash your breath with blah, 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 blah. So in every situation, every commercial says to you, you're not good enough. You're not thin enough. Your hair is not beautiful enough. Your makeup is not good enough. You have acne and no boy's ever going to care about you. You're a little punk and people can beat you up, and therefore you need to work out on and on and on and on. You're not enough. You're not good enough. They're out to get you. There's hordes of immigrants that are going to come in and take your jobs and blow up your factories. And every message is telling you that you need to be afraid. That said, be afraid, but we can help you buy our product, vote for our guy. And the average city dweller is confronted with 2,000 to 3,000 different messages every day, commercial messages, billboards, television, phone, and everything that say, you're not enough, you're in trouble. So they're constantly triggering the unconscious, constantly triggering the amygdala, constantly triggering the paleocortex, which is in this frantic nervous break. So we have high blood pressure, so we have metabolic syndrome, so we're dying prematurely. So our minds don't belong to us. So they're causing us to be anxious, and then they give us an image, and the advertisers look at commercials on television now, the images that you see, the humor that they use, the beautiful, or whatever it is, and they're stealing our imagination. It's making the unconscious mind believe that that is reality, that what Gillette is telling us is reality, or whatever it is that we're being sold out there. And that is what our leadership is. We're having our anxiety triggered, and then we're told this is what's going to help you, and it's a lie.
And you know what? It's a parallel. I think with social media today and kids, that the fear of missing out, and the competition amongst everyone, and I'm not good enough, and it triggers that. And the study came out today. I mean, there's been a number of them, that it increases the depression because you're not in control of you. You're in comparison to, if you want to be a beautiful debutante, you have to smoke cigarettes, or what your friends are doing at a party. I wasn't, so how does that play into it? But it's competition. What do you call it? The competition for attention, or there was the term you used?
Yeah, competing for your eyeballs.
Your eyeballs, right?
Yeah, that's what it's about.
But it's the same dynamic, though, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, and it's in the same dynamic in that there's no concern on the part of the people who are creating this media. There's no concern for what it's really doing to you as a human being. And so it's creating anxiety, it's creating depression, it's creating anorexia. But that's not the concern. And that's why we've reached this place of crisis right now.
And the only way, I'm just dawning on me, had the connection, and the only way you can fix the acne is to buy this product. The only way you can fix the problem that this person is prettier, or this guy is stronger, or this guy's an alpha male, and the only way to do that is to get more likes. So if I can get more likes and get more numbers in that little red dot, which is a whole neuroscience thing, then I could fix it. But we're totally at the mercy of, external forces.
Yeah, because what we really want is relief of the anxiety. What we really want is comfort. What we really want is love. What we really want is to feel inspired. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to feel that we are right where we want to be. The world is beautiful, and every moment brings a new and delightful adventure. That's really what we want, but that's not what they're giving to us. And so what we need then is a new form of leadership that rather than giving a symptomatic treatment, because you buy this pill, okay, so you can buy that Zantac, and it'll quiet down the hypersecretion of your stomach so that you won't burn out your intestines. But what you really need to learn how to do is to stop worrying, to stop being afraid, to stop being frustrated, and to be at peace. And then your gut will quiet down, and then you don't need to take the medication that produces all of the side effects and the long-term effects and so forth. And so we begin that. I don't know who that leader is. Yeah, I know there's a bunch of people, and people can see and hear from a lot of those if they go to betterlisten.com, and you can hear people who are teaching something about how to bring peace to yourself inside, how to separate yourself from being controlled by these outside influences. So in a sense, they're leaders, but what they're telling you is that the real leader is inside of you. That what you need to do is to realize that your brain belongs to you, your mind belongs to you, and to understand that in your thinking, you control your mind, and that by learning how to relax deeply, by learning how to meditate deeply, by learning how to pray deeply, by learning how to enter an auto-hypnotic state, deep relaxation, whatever you might call it, because they're all the same thing. What they do is they guide you into a state where you're not looking at the past, you're not looking at the future, where you're at peace and you're present. And that is what we can call a programming state of your mind. Your commercials do it by scaring you or putting by Shaquille O'Neal up there to tell you that this is the kind of underarm deodorant that keeps him from stinking, and you're going to believe it because it's Shaquille O'Neal. Oh, but now, the other way to go about it is to go to a place of peace. And that's a different kind of hypnotic state. You're in a hypnotic state when you're watching Donald Trump lead his rallies. If you're a Donald Trump follower, you're in a hypnotic state at that point. But this is a different hypnotic state from watching Shaquille O'Neal or Donald Trump or Barbara Streisand. This is you coming into a state of calm and peace. That quiets down your amygdala, quiets down the paleocortex, quiets down the anxiety, the frustration, the anger, the guilt, the shame, the envy, the jealousy, all of that stuff that makes us sick, because those feelings create stress, and that stress produces friction in the body, which causes the dissolution of the organs of your body and the creation of disease. Come to peace. And then once you're at that level of peace, then you contact the wisdom that is at the center of you. And wisdom is what it's all about. To make a wise decision today is to choose to do something today that you're going to feel good about next week. When you look back next week or next month or next year and say, that was a wise decision. That's what wisdom is. Be in touch with that part of yourself and to be clear, what is it that needs to happen in your life?
So why do you have more, scientifically or practically, why does it seem to work that you have more access to that wisdom when you're in that, meditative or relaxed state?
Oh, very good question. This paleocortex, the limbic system, When you are in a state of anxiety or anger, when the limbic system is activated, it shuts off the higher mind. There's a deer who's out there eating grass in the meadow. Boy, this is great grass. And then he happens to look up, and there's a shadow moving through the bushes. And so the limbic system says, that may be a mountain lion, you better get out of here now. Whereas the higher level of the mind might say, there's a shadow in the bushes. Maybe it's a mountain lion, but maybe it's just the sun blowing the shadows, and this grass is really good. I'm just going to hang out here for a while. Nature says you're dead if you do that. Nature says, looks like a mountain lion, run like hell. And so the limbic system, when it's triggered, it shuts off the higher consciousness. And so you cannot think rationally. You cannot think rationally while you're watching Shaquille O'Neal or Barbra Streisand or Donald Trump, depending upon what your orientation is. There are people, believe it or not, who can watch a Donald Trump rally and they don't feel like they want to accept everything that he says automatically. Or people who watch Barbra Streisand, whatever. Again, it's different for different people, but the bottom line is that when you go into that place of peace and calm and stillness, when your body is quiet, when your mind is at peace, and you are in the present moment, you have removed the amygdala and those parts that are generating cortisone and anxiety and adrenaline in your body, and now, and only now, can the higher level of your mind really function? Can you really think clearly? Can you really know who you are, the truth of who you are? When you're in touch with your wisdom, you know what your personal values are. You know what your purpose in life is. And when you know that, you also know what your personal gifts are. And you know what your talents are. And you know what skills you have. And now if you look at the world, you know what you need to do. You know what choices you need to make. It's not a mystery. And now you can make those choices. And in your mind, visualize yourself making the choice that you know at the deepest level is right for you and for those that you love and for the life that you want to create. And then you visualize that in your mind's eye. You imagine. You make a picture in your mind. Again, this primitive part of your mind, your paleocortex, it can't tell the difference whether you're imagining something or if it's real. And that's the secret to it, is when you relax and you show it that image. Visualize yourself making those foul shots. Visualize yourself with the person you love. Visualize yourself winning that contest. And then you will shift into that state of mind as if you are actually there. That state of mind, we call it a state of mind, what it is that your brain is actually working according to a certain algorithm. And each time you visualize yourself being there, you literally rewire your brain so that that becomes your new reality instead of Shaquille O'Neal's reality.
So it's almost like grabbing the remote control for your mind.
I love it. That's it. It's like grabbing the remote control to your own mind. Do you mind if I use that?
Well, you can, as long as you attribute to me.
Every time. Grab that remote control to your own mind.
I'm writing that down.
And now you can say to yourself, am I going to follow somebody? Am I going to buy their product? Am I going to give them my money and support them? Am I going to follow them? Well, should I or should I not? Not because I'm feeling afraid, not because I'm under the influence of celebrity stimulation, not because I'm going along with what those 500,000 attention experts you want me to stick my eyeballs, but instead on the basis of what I know is right at a deeper level of me. And no matter what my neighbors may think, I'm going to choose to do that thing that's right. I'm going to follow that person whose character I believe in. I can tell when people are lying. And, in our culture, we ignore people's character and we go, yeah, he may be a bastard, but he's our bastard. No. You know the story about the frog and the frog and the scorpion? This frog is hopping along and he comes to it's been raining, so there's a little stream coming by, and the frog's about to go across the stream. There's a scorpion sitting there, and the scorpion says, I'd love to get across the water, but I can't swim. And so the frog says, well, that's too bad. The scorpion said, would you carry me over on your back? The frog said, what? No, you're a scorpion. You're going to sting me. I'm not going to carry you on my back. And the scorpion said, no, wait a minute. I'm going to be riding on your back, and I can't swim. We'll be halfway across the water. If I sting you, I'm going to drown too. And the frog said, oh, well, okay. You got a point there. So the scorpion hops on the frog's back, and they start swimming across. They get halfway across the stream. The scorpion stings the frog, and the frog goes, ah! And as he feels the toxin going through his body, and he says, why did you do that? Now we're both going to die. Why did you do that? He says, I'm a scorpion. It's my nature. And to realize that those people who are lying to us out there, those people who are not sincere human beings, if we follow them, we're going to go down when they sting us. But instead to follow the people whose hearts you believe in, people who have the character. So if you're going to follow somebody, or if you're going to do something with character. If you're going to spend your money on something, spend it to support something that really serves your vision of the world, that serves your heart, that serves those things that you love. So we're talking about having as a goal love, happiness, and success for everyone. Not, okay, we're going to beat out you guys. We're going to do well, and okay, we'll have global warming, and it might wipe out your country. It might wipe out your island. But hey, look at how well we're going to do over here. That's not it. You're not in touch with your heart if you're making that kind of decision. So choosing to lead, really, to become your own leader. Become the leader within your own life, to make your choices from a deep place within. That, I think, is the only way that we as a species are going to survive in anything like the beauty that we're capable of.
Very, very interesting. That's actually a good place to stop, but let's go. There were a couple more points I guess would like to kind of hit on as we kind of move towards wrapping up.
Yeah.
So, to the term, the science of leadership, what are some of the key things that are being talked about in the neuroscience of leadership? What are some of the key topics in that thought process that's out there now?
The neuroscience of leadership has to do with shifting so that to realize that every choice that we make in life, we are making because we are being led to make that choice. We are being led either by outside influences, by commercials, by things we've been told, or we're being led by ourselves, having made wise decisions that we've made by taking ourselves into a place of peace and calm. I do not think that it's possible to live in the world that we live in now, given all of the social media, telephones, cell phones, texts, and emails, all of this. I don't think that we can live unless we are able to reach a place of relaxation within us, unless we've learned to meditate, learn to pray, learn to reach a state of deep relaxation.
And what does the science? What does the science have to do with it? If we're looking at the neuroscience of that, how does that? And what's the scientific backup for that statement, or what?
And what that means is to be able to choose using the prefrontal part of our higher brain to create imagery, create concepts and thoughts that we hold in mind so as to influence the monkey mind, so as to quiet the monkey mind. That is to silence the paleocortex and the amygdala, and to thereby decrease the amount of stress, decrease the anxiety, and decrease the anger by building up, by increasing the thickness of the neural tract that runs from the prefrontal cortex down into the limbic system, rewiring the brain in that simple way. And then, having done that, then to be able to use imagination in the form of guided imagery, which then rewires the rest of the limbic system to have a different expectation of the world, and to make choices based not upon what can I do to relieve the symptoms of anxiety, but what can I do to enhance love and joy and beauty and happiness and togetherness in relationship.
Well, that's clear. That's good stuff. And then you used the term before, distributed leadership. So I think that was one of the final points you wanted to kind of bring home. What does that mean? Or what do you mean by that?
Okay, so if I've reached a place where I'm capable of making wise decisions in my life, to realize that I am one of a family, one of a community, in that the human being, what makes us human beings is because of this magnificent neocortex that we have. This huge brain that is above the paleomammalia, above the monkey brain, but it's this big brain. When you look at animals and you look at the size of their brains, particularly look at mammals, look at how much of a brain they have. The bigger brains come when animals have to live in social groups. The bigger the brain, the bigger the social group that the person or that the animal is living in. And we have these big brains because we are designed to live in large social groups. A human being all by himself, a person all wrapped up in himself makes a very small package. That we are nothing. It's like a bee. Take a drone bee. Okay, of what value is that bee? It can continue to live. It can drink nectar. But if it has no other bees, it's missing out on what it's about to be a bee. Because to be a bee means you need to be a member of the hive, or you can't really do what you came here to do. And the same thing with a human being. So to realize that we cannot do it by ourselves, so we now need to connect with other human beings. And because we realize that the true leadership that we need cannot come from the stimulation of anxiety, that we begin to hook up with other people with whom we feel a deep emotional connection, a person who we can open up to, who we can trust. And we find the person, let's say a person is a narcissist who only thinks about himself and winning and what pleases him, and thinks that it all ought to work for him, and he doesn't really care about anybody else. Well, that's not a person you want to follow, because that's not a person who is in touch with their deeper self. A person who is just going to fight you and argue with you, or a person whose whole goal is you should feel anxious and frightened about what's going to happen out there. So those are not adequate leaders. The leader we want is the leader that arises when you and I, let's say, get together. And I see that we're connected. We're both in touch with what we're here for. We recognize that we both care about love, we care about decency, we care about honesty, we care about reverence. We believe that that we all deserve, that we all have certain unalienable rights, including life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And we believe that it's possible to make a world that works for all of us. Now we connect together, or maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 of us can connect together, and now we begin to share our thoughts. And as we do that, there's an excitement that arises within us. And what happens is we begin to tap into what we call collective wisdom, collective intelligence, that we actually can think of things and imagine things as a group that's more powerful than anything that any individual can come up with. And so as we begin to connect in this way together, we begin to create, in a sense, our own little society that serves all of us, and we begin to have ideas. An idea might be to set up a little organization to take care of the homeless children in the neighborhood and make sure that they begin to have a good education. Or maybe we decide to do something about something that's going on in another country. Or perhaps we decide that we want to find someone who can run for office in our neighborhood that can really serve us. And we begin, maybe we'll knock on the doors of other people in the neighborhood and see, are there other people who believe as we do? I don't know. These are simple. Those are just my ideas.
So I have a parallel question. So we talked about at the beginning of this alpha males, you know, and would that be the queen bee or the leader bee, or I'm not sure. I'm not sure how the parallels really work, but but on a team, I think you were getting towards you could be a team player. Can you be a leader or alpha male and also be a team player? Because I think what you're describing is like collective unconscious doing the greater good. That's good stuff. But personally, you know, how do you be a captain and also a team player?
There's an old saying, and I don't know about whom it was originally written, but it said, "We knew he was a great man because when we were with him, we felt great." And so the true kind of alpha male that we need now is a male that makes you feel good about who you are, good about your deeper self. Not someone who makes you feel good because you're living up to his rules.
Well, his or her, well, does it have to be, could it be an alpha female? I mean,
you know, what we're talking about and the kind of distributed leadership that we're talking about comes much more naturally to females than it does to males. Through all of mammalian history, the males go out there and bang their heads into each other. You know, the male chimpanzee, all day long, he sits on the top of the mountain and gazes at the horizon looking for another male who tries to come into his territory. He comes down off of his mountain, kicks their butt, and goes back up on the mountain. That's his whole life. At the end of the day, he comes down and the females groom him and he has sex, and that's it. But the females band together. They share taking care of the babies. They share going out and gathering. The female goes out and gathers a bunch of this and brings it back, and then everybody shares it. Males don't do that. Males just kick the butts of each other, and the females just serve them. It's like that's what's in our DNA. But females know how to do that. We see it in the male ego, in that need to feel like they need to dominate. Now, you know, now of course we have a lot of females who haven't learned to tap into that basic nature within them. But my experience is that females get it. So that alpha is very likely to be a female. And it doesn't make any difference if it's male or female, because we're not talking about procreating here. We're talking about who is it that inspires us as a group of people to be in touch with the miraculous spirit and the incredible creativity and love and power of emotion that we can bring forth into this world when we believe in ourselves. Who makes us feel empowered? Again, not by creating fear and anxiety, but a sense of we can do it. That's the person who, in the group, becomes the alpha. Doesn't put them above, but we're still at an equal level, and yet, somebody has to say, okay, let's go left. And that's the person that you want to choose.
Wow. And I think that idea that you said a little while ago is a pretty good place to end, or to begin to wrap up, is that, what was it? It's the person's a good leader because you feel good in their presence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we knew she was a great leader because we felt great in her presence. That's someone that brings out your own individual greatness, not someone that makes you want to buckle under and go along with the party line. And that's what distributed leadership is about.
I don't know why I keep thinking of the Golden State Warriors, but one of their pillars of their thing is mindfulness of their team. And it's kind of like a distributed leadership. And they're arguably the most successful basketball team ever.
Well, their principles are really the principles of love, and they play. And it's better for you to pass the ball to someone else and have him take a shot than it is for you to shoot it. In fact, we work for assists are more important than making the shot, or at least equal. I mean, with most basketball, it's a very individual kind of game, but what they were able to do was to subordinate that, I would say, that primitive male wanting to beat everybody else, and to come down to, no, it's about us. The strength of the team or nine or crew is not the strength of the star. It's what the body together can do that carries the victory far. So you shall give your might to the rest to bring the whole team through. And then, at the time of your single test, they will give their strength to you. That's what it's about.
Perfect.
That
was perfect. Absolutely perfect. That was just great. What was that last thing that you just recited?
That was something that I learned in elementary school. It was the introduction, and then at the time of their single test, they will give their strength to you. Give me some men who are stout-hearted men who will fight for the right they adore. Start me with 10 who are stout-hearted men, and I'll soon give you 10,000 more.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. All right, Dr. Miller. Wow, that was a show tune or whatever that was awesome.
Yeah, well, I'm here for the Board of Education of the City of New York.
All right, last question. Where did you go to high school? Did you go to high school in Brooklyn?
I went to several high schools. I started out in New Jersey. I went to a Catholic school.
No, I'm just talking Brooklyn. So you moved out of Brooklyn by the time you went to high school?
Yeah, high school, I was going to have to go to boys' high, and that didn't sound like a good idea. So I ended up going up to Jamaica High.
Very nice.
Queens,
All right,
yeah.
so I think we nailed it. That was a great session.
Good. Are you ready to get on with your Saturday?
Well, we have to go pick up my kids in Brooklyn, and we got to keep our day going. They had a sleepover, which was good for them. They have a lot of homework, so we got to get going.
Let me send you the audio that I did for, was it Syracuse? That was a great team, great college team. It was well known. They had a certain piece of music they played when they went on the court and so forth. So I'll send you the imagery. It's kind of slanted toward them, but it'll work for anybody around basketball.
You did it for Syracuse, really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, the coach there asked me to make it for him, but I think it'll be. But it's
not Jim Boeheim. Way before that, or if you find it, great.
8 years ago, maybe 8 or 10 years ago.
Oh, so maybe if it was Syracuse, it was Jim Boeheim, probably.
Could be.
Okay, so yeah, I look forward to seeing that.